Anyway, joining us to discuss all of this, we welcome to the program Horace Cooper. He's an adjunct fellow at the National Center for Public Policy, co-chairman of the Project 21 National Advisory Board, and Brian Claypool, civil rights attorney, and he has been an arbitrator in more than 100 cases. Welcome, both of you.
Hey, Sean.
Thanks for the program.
All right, let's talk about the Clintons' history here. Let's talk about Bill Clinton signing a law that honored the Confederate flag. Hillary hasn't mentioned that. Let's talk about him playing golf at a golf course that didn't at the time allow black people as members. What are your thoughts there, Brian?
Well, I think I agree with you on this one. I think it's hypocritical of the Clinton family to be endorsing the removal of the Confederate flag, for Hillary to be going to Ferguson, Missouri, if she in fact signed a law that endorsed it, and Clinton is really ratifying racism by attending like an all-white country club. I agree with that, but the thing that I don't agree with is the postulation that we should not remove the Confederate flag.
I'm not saying we shouldn't remove it. I didn't even take a position.
Okay,
I'm saying I don't have a problem removing it at all.
I agree with you, because I think it's time for politicians to walk the walk. You know what's funny about it is
But you know what bothers me, Brian? This is not a Republican problem, and it's now somehow become a Republican candidate problem. Democrats put that up. Republicans in the early 1960s, they were voting for the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act that, let's see, Robert Byrd and Al Gore's father and Southern Democrats were voting against. So this is a Democratic problem, and that's my point.
I wish I could disagree with you on this. I agree this time. I think it's purely hypocritical.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's more than hypocritical, Sean. The problem, as I see it, has been that there is a long legacy among Democrats of using racial division for their own political gain. If setting back the interests of black America helped and promote the interest of their party, they were willing to filibuster the Voting Rights Act. They were willing to filibuster the Civil Rights Act. A lot of people don't remember, but Richard Nixon, as vice president, helped to craft the first Civil Rights Act. And in fact, that's where we got the Civil Rights Division from the Justice Department. But it was Democrats who worked as assiduously as they could. And they did it not really because they believed what some in America believed, that there were differences that you could measure by race. They did it because it served their political needs. And they continue to do it today. She was the senator, Hillary Clinton, from New York State. And yet, their voting rules are very restrictive, they're very limiting, and despite that, she comes out when she campaigns and she says in Texas, we're going to have to change these rules in Texas so that black Americans can vote. She does these things, and other Democrats do these things to exploit them. Ernest Hollings put that flag up for his own political purposes. Why any other party or any other modern-day politicians are going to be held accountable for decisions that Democrats were making for their own goals, that, to me, ought to be the real story. I don't understand why we're letting them play political games that divide us.
You know, this is what's frustrating to me, because this is somehow... You know, I'm going to give a history lesson on TV tonight because I'm so angry about people's misperception. You know what, Brian? Every election you can count on certain things that Democratic candidates are going to do. They're going to divide the country, black versus white, rich versus poor, old versus young. They're going to say Republicans want dirty air and water, and they want to throw Granny over the cliff. The same playbook. Now, for some reason, I don't think most Americans know the history of the Democratic Party. They don't know that Robert Byrd filibustered the Civil Rights Act, but yet he became the Senate Majority Leader, that he was a former Ku Klux Klan Grand Wizard, and that he became the Senate Majority Leader for the Democratic Party. And I'm sick and tired as Democrats have advanced the narrative, sadly, that too many Americans believe that is false, that somehow conservatives are racist. No, I'm not a racist. I deplore racism. I find it repugnant and evil, as most people I know do. People look at this idiot in South Carolina as evil, a racist, bigoted, evil human being. I don't know what else you can say about him. And if people want to pass legislation that say, all right, we're going to ban the flag, okay, go do it. But that's not what caused this idiot to act this way. You want to pass more gun laws? He broke about 5 of them when he committed that crime. So gun laws aren't the answer either. Bad guys don't listen to gun laws. But if we want to, if the one thing that we could focus on is he had all the rantings and ravings of a lunatic that were out there available for all to see, and we didn't pick up on it ahead of time. That's where I think we're making a mistake and where lives can be saved.
I think that's a great point, and I think Horace hits on a good point too, which is really what's happening here. Our Democrats are trying to capitalize on a very terrible situation with a mass murder. They're trying to capitalize on this, and it's not going to work. And I'll tell you why, because I've been a civil rights advocate over the last 10 years, and I have openly stated that, for example, Eric Holder's office, for the last how many years when he was in office, he did nothing, for example, to track racial profiling in 50 states. Congress had passed a bill over 10, 15 years ago, that the DOJ was supposed to monitor and canvass local police departments. Nothing was done there at all. Yet every time there's a mass shooting and or an Eric Garner or a Freddie Gray, the DOJ comes out and says, "Oh, we've got to make some changes." Let me give you one more quick example.
By the way, the autopsy in the Freddie Gray case came out last night, and I got to tell you, it's about as extraordinarily exculpatory for the police as anything I could have imagined.
Well, no, I disagree with that, because you can prove second-degree murder, and
you have to show a depraved mindset. What the autopsy is saying, it was one impact to the spine and back that happened while Freddie Gray was in the back of the police van. You can't prove that and on top of that, by the way, you have witnesses saying that he was thrashing himself back and forth out of anger, so it could have happened that way. And number two, there might be a civil suit because they didn't put him in a seatbelt. That's not a crime.
No, it is a crime, because you don't need intent. Depraved mind means you don't throw a guy on his stomach handcuffed. He barely walk. He's screaming in pain in the back, and then
they say that there was nothing that happened prior to that event that caused this death.
No, the rapid deceleration of the
okay, they
but
said.
John, as you point out, before he got into the truck, the autopsy doesn't show that there was any evidence of any injury or any concern that would have caused them to take special care in his treatment, and the autopsy also appears to suggest that we can't tell, was it something the driver did, or was it more likely something the passenger did? Now, it used to be policy for almost 20 years in Baltimore that you didn't even have to seatbelt people when they were caught this way. So now, in 6 weeks' time, you make this change, and now it's a felony to have not seatbelted this person. I think that's a stretch. But I also think the conversation that we started with about race relations in America, I have to tell you, other than the progressive narrative that is frightening a lot of black Americans and other minorities, race relations on record, on objective evidence, are better than they had been in a while. The problem has been the willingness over the last 6 to 8 years of leading political officials to use race relations issues as a wedge, and it has set us back. But the idea that it is worse to be black in 2015 than it was in 1955, ridiculous. Or even 1970, ridiculous. The truth is this country is a place of opportunity, and if people are willing to take advantage of that and the government gets out of the way, a lot of the problems that people have could get addressed.
Well, how did President Obama become president? He's a black man president. So there has been progress. I didn't understand his comment. There's been no progress
he also said it's in our DNA as if it's pathological and unchangeable. That's just the facts speak otherwise.
Yeah, they absolutely do, but he does it for a reason. And I say this again and again, when people look around who happen to be black and they wonder, why is there so little money in my bank account? Why is it that I can't afford to own a home? Why can't my kids get to go to a good college? And why don't I have a good job? What these progressives turn around and say, ignore the destructive economic policies that we have put in place and just remember that it is the white racist unicorn. In fact, if we just ban this Confederate flag, you'll be amazed at all of the great things that are going to happen. It is a deception, it's cruel, it's cynical, and it's yet again an example of how today's Democrats are no different than yesterday's Democrats. They exploit
I got to leave it here, guys,
for their own purposes.
All right, I appreciate your time, both of you. Thank you for the debate, and we'll have more on this in a history lesson on Hannity tonight at 10 Eastern.